What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's FPL transfer tips ahead of Game Week 3. The transfer market is moving quickly. There's a lot of transfers in, a lot of transfers out. I'm going to talk about some popular players in this one that people are thinking about what to do with, whether they should remove them, go for them, stick another week, just transfer them out straight away, take a hit even in some cases. So there's a lot of players to go through, so I'm going to get stuck into it now. Do give it a like if you enjoy it and hit that subscribe button if you're new around here, and let's jump into it. Okay, so any excuse to talk about Antonio, I'm going to take it, and I think we have to talk about him this week. He's very highly owned, but still getting a lot of transfers in. A couple of kind of admin bits first of all. So 382,540 transfers in. That is net transfers in. So I've started to take away the in from the out or vice versa. A bit like that guy that got famous for Arsenal talking about the net spend, right? So I've gone for net transfers in. And also, anyone we talk about comes with a caveat about the international break thing. So just to quickly touch on that, right? The issue is that some players are going to have to go and play, it's either in or against countries that are red listed, right? And so right now the government rules would say they have to isolate when they come back. The Premier League or teams from the Premier League, it looks like they're going to try and veto it and stop that. So like Salah, for example, Liverpool aren't going to let him go and play. So right now, I would be surprised if the Premier League or the teams or the players just not go to places where they have to isolate. Obviously, we're going to find out a bit more later on this week, I'm sure. But that's where we're at right now. So any player I talk about that's potentially going to go away on international break and have to isolate, we'll just have to take that with a pinch of salt for now and just wait and see later on in the week. Because obviously if Antonio or Benrahma or whoever are going away and then they're not going to be available for Game Week 4 and 5, that kind of rules them out. But I just don't think, looking at everything right now, that's going to happen. So I'm not going to keep saying that for every single player. I just wanted to get it out at the start. Let's get into Antonio. 34.2% owned, now up to 7.7 million. So he's already gone up 0.2 since the start of the season. 14.5 points per match. Guess what? He's never going to keep that up. But is he a good option? I think he is. Now with West Ham, the one thing to bear in mind is between Southampton and Man United, so after the international break and before Game Week 5, they start playing in the Europa League. Now, if you look at West Ham's squad, the depth isn't that high. And we don't really know how David Moyes is going to approach the Europa League. Will he take it, I don't want to say seriously, but will he put all his kind of first 11 in the Europa League, try and get a good run? Or will he rotate a lot at the start and see what happens and use his big boys for the Premier League instead? We're not quite sure. But one thing's for sure, they don't have strength in depth. When you think about who's going to come in for Antonio, who would it be? He'd probably have to play someone out of position. So there are some worries about that, right? International break and then straight into Europa League pretty much. But the next two fixtures are so good, Crystal Palace and Southampton. There's no reason why he can't score in both of those games. And the fixtures after Man United are also really good. Leeds, Brentford, Everton. Now, I would, for anyone that says Antonio is a little bit injury prone, then yeah, fair enough, I would agree. We're all worried about his hamstrings. But I remember a couple of seasons ago when everyone said the same thing about Danny Ings. He had a good run of games, he was fully fit, and people kept worrying about him getting injured, and he never did. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen with Antonio whatsoever, but he is so good for his price. He's underpriced. He could easily be like a 8.5, 9 million pound forward. And if you wait, potentially you're going to miss Palace, Southampton, Leeds, Brentford and Everton. There's such good fixtures. Man United is the only real tough one, I would say, in that whole run. His underlying stats, his expected goals, his expected assists are always super high. They're basically on a par with some of the best players in the league, right? So he is underpriced. And I feel like you can just put him in and just wait until the injury happens. If it happens, we can just transfer him out, right? And there's plenty of other 7.5 and 8 million pound forwards available. I just don't think you have to worry about it. I think you just have to ride it out while he's in great form, great player with great fixtures. So for me, definitely a buy, and I would definitely consider it doing this week. I'm also seeing loads of people even putting the captaincy on him. I don't think it's that far-fetched of a shout. So yeah, absolute buy. 382,000 managers, net transfers in. It's only going to continue. Great fixtures to come. If he gets injured, so be it. We'll just transfer him out. So I think, look, I'm sure a lot of people watching this probably aren't buying Tsimikas, but he has overall been transferred in by over 168,000 managers already this week, and a lot of people have also got rid of him. So I think it's a good thing to talk about him, because you can look at it from both perspectives. So I absolutely wouldn't transfer him. Robertson was on the bench, but what I would say is Robertson didn't come on, which I think was interesting. Now, the game was won. They weren't going to lose it at that point when Tsimikas came off, so they didn't really need to give Robertson a run out and maybe, I don't know, aggravate his injury or anything like that. But he was on the bench, which made me think that he was probably good to get some minutes. Like, I was worried he was going to come on around the 60-minute mark, but when Tsimikas did come off, it was Gomez that came on. So maybe they just didn't want to risk Robertson, and perhaps he's not quite up to full speed yet, which wouldn't be that surprising, because Klopp said it might be before the international break, it might be afterwards. So I wouldn't completely write off Tsimikas playing against Chelsea. Now, obviously, I know people are going to say they're going to want Robertson to play. Of course, Robertson is arguably the best left-back in the world, if not in the top 3, right? We know they're going to want him to play. It's going to be a tough game against Chelsea. But you don't, from a Liverpool's perspective, yes, that game is super important. But if it's a case of, okay, we can play Robertson, but there's a good chance we might make his injury worse, and then he's out for a good few games afterwards, or just playing Tsimikas, they might just play Tsimikas, right? So I don't think you should be buying him. I think it's way too big of a risk that he doesn't keep on starting. But those of you who've got him, there is a chance he plays against Chelsea. And there might not be that you want to play him against Chelsea. And we might get news from Klopp that says Robertson's fine, by the way. But having that bench player could be decent for another week, just in case he has to come on, just in case he can happen to get a clean sheet against Chelsea. But for anyone that's looking to cash in, like to go to a different 4 million. Again, I don't necessarily think it's a bad move, because I think a lot of people have got teams this week where they just don't need to make any moves. And if you're genuinely in that position, then doing a Tsimikas to a Duffy or a Tsimikas to Livramento, I'm on board with that. But if you've got another move you can make, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't just let Tsimikas stay on the bench. He's got so many transfers in this week. He's already gone up in price to 4.2. He's not going to suddenly drop this week. Next week maybe, the week after, who knows? And yes, it's nice to bank that 0.1 million, but it's also nice to get points. And I think for a lot of people, there's probably better transfers they can do. So if you don't own him, don't buy. If you've got him, there's no rush to sell. The only time I would do it is if you've got the absolute luxury of where the rest of your squad is absolutely perfect, and attacking wise in particular, you've got nothing to do. Okay, so Harvey Barnes only had net 80,000 transfers out, but I think he's quite a popular player in the kind of Twitter and YouTube sphere, right? FPL sphere. So I wanted to talk about him, and this is a really tricky one for owners, right? I don't really envy people that have Harvey Barnes, because I know I would want to sell, but then I know I'm looking at Norwich thinking I can't sell. And that's kind of, I don't even want to call it a trap, right? It's never a trap to keep an attacker against a team like Norwich, right? I kept Gundogan, I kept Mahrez. Okay, I only got 1 goal out of the 2, for example, but I think it was the right move in my case to keep them. For some people, it won't be the case. You just want to sell him straight away. And I know a lot of people have already done Barnes to Benrahma, so I want to give my opinions on that move. Just really quickly on his numbers so far. And again, all the caveats apply. It's a small sample size, only a couple of games. It's not pretty. 1 shot in the box over the first 2 games. Not been necessarily easy fixtures, by the way. Wolves' defence last year was fairly decent. It has been for a long time now. And obviously, West Ham defence is quite good. Plus, they did go down to 10 men, Leicester. So that was always going to make it a lot trickier. They're also missing Bertrand, for example. That might be hindering things a little bit in that left-back spot. But 1 shot in the box, 1 chance created. I mean, it's not really the numbers that we were hoping for when we watched him in that Charity Shield game. And obviously, a lot of people brought him in. So let's get to the point, right? Would I transfer him out before Norwich? If there was a move that I was going to make anyway, bearing in mind, I don't think Man City at home and Brighton away is going to yield too many points. If I was going to make the move in Game Week 4 anyway, I would consider bringing it forward just to not take that price drop. But if you've already missed out on the Benrahma rise, it's probably not quite so bad, right? Because you can't get that back now anyway. And Norwich is just such a good fixture. If I've got another move to make, I'm not prioritising Barnes. The only caveat to that is with Perez out, what if they go to a 2 up front formation? I don't know if they've got enough fit centre-backs to play that, by the way. They could play some of the full-backs in a centre-back position, possibly. But I don't know. My gut feeling is Barnes starts again. I just think he will. I think Rodgers is always talking him up. Whenever he's fit and they can play someone else on the other side, they pretty much always play kind of 4-2-3-1. Obviously, Maddison in the 10. We know Ndidi and Tielemans in the pivot. They pretty much always play that formation. And I think, given how good Iheanacho was last year, and then straight away this season, they don't start with 2 up front. That just tells me what formation Rodgers prefers. So if I've got him, in most scenarios, I think I keep for Norwich, especially if there's just a different transfer I can make. Again, if you're in a luxury position where your team looks good, you want to protect some value, I'm not against selling him, but Norwich away could be a big score. Don't forget they've played some pretty good teams so far. The 10 men obviously influence the game a lot. Norwich is decent. I'll be tempted to keep. Shane Duffy. What a legend. 8 points per match so far. Goal in the last game. And he is a proper set-piece kind of danger man for Brighton. When he's in the team, he's the one that they're usually aiming for. He's already had 7 shots in the box for the first 2 games, which was pretty decent compared to a lot of like strikers or midfielders, right? Let alone for a centre-back. So he is the real deal when it comes to set-piece threat. And I think the fixtures overall are okay for rotation. You're probably not going to want to play him every week, but you've either got A, some good fixtures you could play him in, or B, you bench him, and then if he does come off the bench, he's got a chance of getting you a goal and possibly the odd clean sheet. The biggest question mark is, will he keep his place, right? So I think before Brighton sold anyone, and if everyone was fit, we're thinking, right, it'll be Lamptey, it'll be White, it'll be Dunk, Webster, and then obviously someone playing on the left, right? I think March has been playing there at the moment, but whatever. They could have just played someone else left wing, but Dan Burn potentially as well. But obviously he got injured. They sold White. Veltman's then out, apparently with a close contact, but now he's been out for a few weeks and he's not going to be available till after the international break. Suddenly I'm thinking Duffy in the medium term could be a good pick. There was also a quote this morning, which I think I tweeted out or retweeted, that Dan Burn is going to be out a little bit longer than they first expected. So even if Veltman comes back into the team, he could play right wing back. And then there's a talk about, well, what when Lamptey comes back? He'll play right wing back. Then Veltman could play right centre back. Dunk, Webster shift over or whatever. And then there's no place for Duffy. But at this point, Lamptey hasn't played a game, like a proper game in the Premier League for a long time, right? If Veltman is a close contact as maybe whatever's keeping him out this long, maybe it's illness or something like that, will he come straight back into the team? So I think because of the price, I think Duffy is a good buy right now. I think you could. The only thing is obviously the international break gives you 2 weeks to kind of get players up to full speed. But if he plays against Everton, Brentford and Palace, you could see 1 or 2 clean sheets from those 3 games, and he's got goal threat as well. And even if Veltman comes back in, like I said, it could be right wing back, and they keep Duffy in until Dan Burn is back. And the fact that he's going to be out longer now just makes Duffy a better option. And look, we can talk about how he's not a great defender. They shipped him off to Celtic. But the reality is he's come in and played 2 games. They've kept a clean sheet in 1. They could have possibly kept a clean sheet in the other one as well. He hasn't really put a foot wrong. Potter's praising him. Now, obviously, managers do that, right? Some players just need the praise. And when you've got a centre-back you're having to play because of injuries, you don't want to then say, well, he's having a bad time right now, do you? But it just all points to me that he could be a really good option for 4.1. Again, we don't need to go out and spend transfers just to get him in before he goes up to 4.2 or whatever. But if you've got a spare transfer, you need a defender for this week, and then you might want him for game week 4. I don't really see the problem. If Lamptey's suddenly back fit and Veltman plays right centre back, okay, it's frustrating, but you can just keep Duffy on the bench until you can deal with him. So I think he's a good buy. And I'm not doing it this week, but I'm pretty tempted for game week 4 if I need a defender transfer. So I spoke about Calvert-Lewin last week on a different video. I think I put him on the watch list. And I did say that obviously a lot of people didn't go for him in game week 1 because he was flagged, but he's fit now. We know he's going to be there number 9, front and centre every single game. And the fact that he's now on penalties, and by the way, this isn't a case that he won the penalty and then it's his. He was asked about it after the game, and he is their penalty taker. From all things we can see and from what he said, he's now the penalty taker. So we add in someone with great underlying stats anyway, that likes a good amount of shots in the box. Like 9 shots in the box for 2 games is really good. That's the kind of volume you want from a striker. Obviously more is better, but that's decent, right? 4.5 a game. Plenty of shots in the box. Really decent expected goals. And now he's got penalties as well. That's potential to add 3 to 5 goals over the season. He's obviously already got 1 from that. He looks a really good buy, right? Now, Man United and West Ham at the end of this kind of run is not easy, but after that they got a couple of nice fixtures as well. I think Burnley to Norwich is a really good spot to own him. This week, right, because I know a lot of people are going to look to bring him in. He's already been bought in by 124,000 people. I would say there's not a rush to bring him in, but for some people, right, you might be in a similar position to me where you've got Mahrez, for example, or someone like that in your midfield. Maybe Son, for example, if it comes back that he's injured this week, which I'm not saying he is, by the way, but obviously there are doubts about him and we're going to have to wait and see what Nuno says in the press conference. You might want to shift some money from midfield to striker, and maybe you just want to get Calvert-Lewin in place for that Burnley to Norwich run and then reassess afterwards, I don't think it's a bad idea to buy him this week. But if you're in a position where potentially, I don't know, you've got Toney, who I'm going to talk about in a minute, and you want to set up to have the money for him next week, I don't think that's a bad ploy to get him in game week 4 anyway. The only downside is there's a chance that he rises in price to 8.2 this week, and obviously if he scores at the weekend again against Brighton, he's probably almost certainly, doesn't make sense, I know, going to rise before Burnley, and then you might be forced into an early move, and obviously it's international break as well, so that could get difficult. So I don't think there's any problem with bringing him in this week, but if you're in a position where you're trying to force it or it's for a hit, I think you can absolutely just set it up this week and wait till Burnley. But Calvert-Lewin, great underlying numbers, and now on penalties, great value, great striker. Okay, so this one's not surprising. When you have such a highly owned player that's cheap as well and newly promoted, like if they score a goal or two in the first couple, their price just goes up straight away, no questions asked. But when they fail, it's always likely to go down as well. So he's not dropped in price yet, but he has been transferred out by 229,000 managers already. I'm looking at on FPL statistics, right? And they have, it's fplstatistics.co.uk. They have a target percentage, right? So if it's plus, it means people are buying them. If it's minus, it means he's being sold. And he's currently minus 47.9% towards his target. So once a player hits like minus 80 or 90%, that's when you've got to start worrying about a price drop. So I don't think it's going to happen in the next day or two, but by the game week 3 deadline, it could happen, okay? So if you've got the money to maybe upgrade to some of the players we talked about, Calvert-Lewin or Antonio or someone like that, you could potentially make the move this week, because Brighton, Wolves, Liverpool, West Ham, Chelsea is not a good run of fixtures. If you don't yet have the money, I don't think he's worth taking out for a hit, even if he's about to drop in price. I know people like to protect value, and so do I. If I can get some extra money in my squad, in not pre-season, but in the first couple of weeks of the season, then great. I think it does help you in the long run at certain times, but you can't just take out everyone as soon as they're about to drop in price, because then the price drops and rises are starting to dictate your decisions, and maybe you're not thinking about it clearly. So I think Aston Villa away is a perfectly good fixture. Let's not forget this is someone on penalties, and sometimes you just get a dodgy penalty and you get points out of nowhere. That could happen here as well. But Aston Villa away is a perfectly fine fixture to keep him for. You don't even necessarily need to get rid of him for Brighton and Wolves, but I know a lot of people are getting cold feet. They want to upgrade that position to like a, I don't know, a Jimenez or a Wilson or Antonio or Calvert-Lewin. But maybe they don't have the money right now. So I don't think setting up this week and then moving him out next week is a bad plan. But I think you definitely keep him for Aston Villa in most scenarios. The other issue is as well, if you don't have the money to go up, who do you go down to? Like Armstrong for Southampton looks good, but the fixtures aren't great. And then Pukki as well. Next couple of fixtures aren't fantastic for Norwich still. So preferably you wouldn't get him into like game week 5 or something like that. So if you had that plan where you were going to keep Toney for like 4 weeks and then move him on, and kind of keep that position as like a £6.6 million forward slot, again, I don't think it's a bad play to keep him, but at some point soon, if this keeps up, we're going to have to make a move. And for me, that will probably be next week, but I'm going to give him the Aston Villa game, and I think you can keep him for this week if you've got other pressing issues to go ahead and attend with, basically. So I know I've gone for a lot of players today, but I had to talk about Said Benrahma. Obviously, brilliant so far. Already gone up to 6.2 million. There's every chance that he's going to go up again. If I quickly check now where he's at in terms of percentage up, he's already on 35% going up in transfers, right? So again, once he gets to 80 or 90 or very close to 100, there's a good chance he rises again. So I think he's going to go up to 6.3 million before the game week 3 deadline, which is crazy. Now, for anyone that doesn't own him, massively frustrating so far. 24 points, obviously huge. And look, I'm getting kind of Lingard vibes from this a little bit, right? I didn't get Lingard in the end of last season. We don't need to go through the whole story again. I felt like it was unsustainable, and I feel like this is a little bit as well. He scored 2 goals. I think he's had 2 assists. So he's got 4 returns from basically 6 chances. So 3 chances created and 3 shots in the box. So it's not like he's having a high volume of chances or he's creating necessarily extremely good chances for his players. And let's not forget that look, I thought West Ham were the better team anyway before the red card, but the red card definitely helped with the amount of goals that West Ham scored. And obviously it was a massive mistake from Soyuncu that Antonio latched onto, passed it to Benrahma. That was his only real chance of note from last night, right, in terms of the amount of shots he had and stuff like that. So, look, I own him. There's no way I'm selling him. And I think the fixtures like Antonio are just so good up to Game Week 7. You just hold him and hope for the best. There's not really been any advanced rumours about Lingard coming in. It's still possible because the transfer window is not shut yet. But it looks like Benrahma is going to be played in a couple of positions. He played number 10 in the first game. He played left last night. That was mostly so Fornals could be in there as like a bit of just someone to do a bit more work. Him and Antonio, Fornals this is, we're trying to block the pass from the centre-backs to the central midfielders like Tielemans and Ndidi, and it worked really well. So Benrahma, I guess, just wasn't trusted maybe to do that job. Maybe Moyes thought he could do a better job from the left. I don't know. But obviously he's going to move around a bit. But if he's flexible to do that, that's kind of handy for his minutes. So right now, he's not a minute's risk. It's only really if Lingard comes in, I would say. And the fixtures are just good. So I think he has to be a buy right now. I think there's not really any good reason not to. I know the amount of shots and chances and stuff he's had is quite low, but for his price and the fixtures, he just looks like a really good buy still. And you don't have to keep him for the season. And there are so many £6 million midfielders that you can swap to later. You're not even going to get stuck with him. So Sarr, Harrison, etc. are all 6 million and currently cheaper as well. So you'd even save some money if you make some money on him. So yeah, I like this pick. I think it could be a Lingard thing where he just goes on a run. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point he starts blanking because he's not getting a huge amount of shots off or anything like that. But for now, I think you just ride out this this upward curve with those fixtures. So there we go. That is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. I know that was probably a little bit longer than usual for the transfer tips video, but there was a lot of players to go through and so many people have got 2 free transfers that I wanted to kind of talk about all the popular players basically and whether to sell, whether to buy. Yeah, there's a lot of tough decisions this week, so I hope you enjoy it. I've got 2 transfers to make as well. I've got no idea right now what to do with them, but I will talk on my team selection video about them. If you have enjoyed this video, give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. And I just want to shout out to the new recruits on Patreon. If you want to check it out, everything there is to offer, including extra Q&As and stuff like that, there is a link in the description below. Big shout out to Johan E, John G, and Steve W for signing up since the last video. I will leave it there. I'll be back tomorrow with team selection, game week preview, and all that good stuff to come later on this week as well. Yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it. Give it a like if you did. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you soon.